Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wellness Wednesday. I hope you are having a fabulous day already. I'm so happy you're here. If you are just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I am a mom, a nana, a wellness advocate, studying to become a personal trainer, working on grad school, all kinds of things going on in my world. But one of the reasons that I started Wellness Wednesday was because I have had quite the journey with depression and anxiety and various other things, and I've learned a lot about wellness. And a lot of what I've learned has been because other people have shared, and I have shared with other people. So I believe that there's a lot of things that we know that we hear all the time that sometimes we just need to hear over and over and over again until it's the right moment for us for those things to click. So what I love about Wellness Wednesday is the viewers that get on here and share their experiences, their input. And I hope you find this helpful today. So if you're here, let me know you're here. Hit hashtag replay in the comments. Good morning, Miss Stacy. And if you ask questions or make comments and I don't respond, it's because I don't always see those. Sometimes I do. But Facebook doesn't always show me all the things. So if I don't respond when you're on or when you comment, then it's just because I didn't see it, and I promise I will afterwards. Okay, so when it comes to wellness, we cover a lot of things. We oftentimes end up in mindset because that's where, let's face it, that's where most things start. Last week, we were covering imposter syndrome. A lot of times my topics come from something I'm experiencing or something someone I know is experiencing, and it gives me an idea that this might be something worth talking about. And I kind of joked last week while we were talking about imposter syndrome that because I had hurt my back, we might talk about it this week. And it turns out that I decided that it wasn't such a terrible idea. When I was growing up, I heard the phrase, I threw my back out a lot, and I'm sure you did too, but I'm not really sure that anybody ever knew exactly what that meant. So it was just a phrase that was often used to reference back pain, and in my world, more specifically, lower back pain. So I'm not a doctor. So what I'm sharing here today is my experiences and the information that I have picked up from a couple of medical and spinal care websites, because basically what happens is I did throw my back out last Monday. And so I wanted to know more about it because it's actually the third time it's happened to me since December. And I don't know about you, but when things keep happening, for me, I have trouble accepting that this is going to be my lot in life. And so I will learn and I will research and I will try to find ways to make sure it doesn't happen again. An example was a previous experience with costochondritis. And after the second time that I got it, I started doing some research, and one of the things that was said was that once you get it, you are more likely to get it again. And I said, oh no, I'm not willing to accept that. And that's where the mindset comes in, because a lot of times how we approach a situation and how we respond to it makes a huge difference in how we recover. And that can be in the physical realm as well, although not all the time. So what does throwing your back out mean? Because the same thing kind of happened. After the third time, I'm like, okay, this is stupid. I've had enough of this. And I'm not doing this anymore. So, of course, I went looking for ways to prevent this from happening again and what causes it. Although by the time I went looking, this was my third round, and I had a pretty good idea because of some things I stumbled on in the process of trying to get better. So what does it mean to throw your back out? Well, throwing your back out, generally, we picture things like vertebrae moving and things like that. What it really means is that you have an acute onset of lower back pain in the lumbar region of your spine, somewhere between your ribs and above the pelvis. And that most often it's a muscle strain or spasms from lifting, bending, or twisting the wrong way. Good morning, Miss Kathy. How are you today? It's basically the medical equivalent to rolling or spraining your ankle. Hey, Miss Carla, good morning. So what does it or what causes it? Well, the Florida Spine and Injury page says if you're reading this, it can happen to you. However, it is often said in most of these articles, and this is my favorite thing, and that's dripping with sarcasm in case you didn't pick up on that, is that it is something that tends to happen more often as we get older. Yes, I'm getting older, but I refuse to accept, again, that this is something that I am going to have to deal with all the time. So what can cause it? People who sit for long periods of time with inadequate back support. The last time I had any kind of back trouble was literally years ago. We're talking like 2007, where I had started at a new job for a short period of time before I went back to my old one. And I chose a chair in the office that I thought was the best chair, but the chair did not fit me properly. So what ended up happening was within a couple of weeks, I would be walking into a store and just feel like my back didn't want to hold me up, like I was going to drop and fall. And that was really scary. But because I'd never had anything like that before, my proclivity is to look back and go, okay, what has changed? What have I been doing differently? Good morning, Anne. How are you today? So that's what I did. And after a little bit of research, what I learned was that because my chair was very ill-fitting, I couldn't sit with my butt all the way to the back of the chair. If I did, my feet didn't hit the floor. It had arms. The chair was essentially way too big for me. So I was perching on the end of on the edge of my chair all the time with my arms on the arms of the chair, and it was weakening my back. Another experience I had was with hips when I started to run longer distances and I was sitting all the time, because my glute muscles were weak. And so as time went on and I started picking up speeds in my running, I found that I was having more and more trouble with sore hips and some lower back pain. And that is when I started standing. So people who sit for long periods of time with inadequate back support, so that can be the wrong chair, just sitting way too much. If your core muscles are weak, oftentimes your back muscles will end up taking the load, especially if you're not using your legs and your butt basically to do the lifting properly. Poor physical fitness or long periods of sedentary lack of activity followed by bouts of exercise like weekend warriors, or this is where I went wrong. I had a 2-week period where I was really, really struggling with motivation and I wasn't getting regular exercise. And then, of course, once I started again, I jumped right back into my regular routine. And that is more than likely what set me up for a problem this time. And again, like we already said, if you've done it before, the chances are increased that it will happen again, or it tends to happen a little bit more as we age. I already talked about that with the costochondritis situation. Happy Wednesday. And if it's a muscular thing, that is not due to any serious long-term illness, underlying condition, then it doesn't have to be like that if you take the time to learn about what's causing it and how you can prevent it. So what can you do when this happens? Well, there's different schools of thought that exist. There's specifically 2 different schools of thought that exist between this type of injury, or like I made the reference before, about it being the medical equivalent to rolling or spraining your ankle. And this is where, again, I'll state, I am not a doctor. I am speaking strictly on personal experiences, and I have found information from doctors and medical websites that have confirmed what I've experienced. So there's 2 schools of thought. One is rest, rest, rest. And the other one is that in certain situations, like rolling your ankle or straining your back, that movement actually helps, and that resting too much or for too long can actually make it worse and make it take longer to heal. What I have learned, I rolled my ankle 3 or 4 times in a short period of time several years ago. And one of those situations was like the day before a major weekend long event where I had to be on my feet. So resting simply was not an option. Now, I had done some research that stated that if I rolled my ankle and I could get my regular gait back running within a couple of steps, that it was okay to keep going. So in this particular instance, I did keep going. And what I learned, and this was, I think, the second time I rolled my ankle, was what I learned was that continuing to move that foot because I could without limping or anything like that actually made the injury easier to deal with and made it possible for me to keep moving longer and faster. And it actually recovered better. So I learned with some trial and error that resting would often make it take longer to heal and make it more difficult to get on, and moving helped it more. So it depends on which school of thought you want to subscribe to, and of course, how bad the injury is. In the case of my back, the first time that I did it during an exercise class. And, this is not necessarily a good thing, so I would warn you against this, but my pride would not let me quit. So I stopped for a few minutes and massaged the lower back a little bit. And then as I tried to get back into the exercise, and as I started moving, I started having less and less trouble. And by the end of the class, it felt tight, but it didn't feel painful like it did when it first started. So that was kind of my light bulb that I needed to keep moving. So as I said, in other cases, depending on how bad the injury is, rest may be the best option. Your body stiffens up and your muscles sometimes spasm and tighten up because they're trying to protect you. They're like, okay, you've done too much, you need to stop. So again, different schools of thought depending on who you talk to and what you read. Ice is always recommended for a minimum of the first 24 hours. This can range from 24 to 72 hours. I even saw one recommendation where you don't even touch heat until like the 4th day. For me, I have tried it both ways, and I would agree that ice during the first 24 to 48 hours is the best way to go. The recommendation is almost always 10 to 20 minutes, or to alternate when you start the heat. Now, why ice and why heat? Ice reduces blood flow. So if you're having inflammation, which I did in the first couple of days, heat tends to aggravate inflammation, whereas ice tends to calm it down. So if you have inflammation, generally what's recommended is ice. However, heat does encourage blood flow. So once you reach a point where that inflammation is not as much of a problem, heat will actually help blood get to the muscles and allow them to start healing a little bit better. I've actually seen a recommendation that says as much as 30 minutes on heat, but for the most part, the recommendation is ice for the first 24 to 48 hours, and then alternate heat and ice for 10 to 20 minutes each, depending on what you're doing. Moist heat is always recommended as better, but it can sometimes be trickier to provide. Usually I end up on a heating pad. In my case, I discovered in the process of trying to do stretching and self-massage that a lot of my issue was actually coming from my glutes. And what I figured out was that, and I've done this before because I know this about lower back pain, a lot of lower back pain that's not acute, that's aching, especially if you sit all the time, is actually coming from your glute muscles, and it's referred pain that comes here. So what I started doing was sitting on my heating pad because it was too soon really to have the heat on my lower back. But I started sitting on my heating pad, and between the heating pad and the self-massage on my glutes, I was getting tremendous relief on my back almost immediately. So that brings me to the next thing, which is self-massage and, of course, compression. Compression support. Now, a lot of times this is recommended by these medical and spine websites as an abdominal corset, which is one of those things, back support, you wrap it around here. In my case, I didn't have to do that because I have these awesome compression leggings that I wear all the time because that's what I sell in my boutique. And the beauty of the compression leggings is they are snug enough that, y'all, let me tell you, when I would put them on, it was almost like I could feel my muscles, my lower back muscles saying, yay, help is on the way. But even better, I could wrap an ice pack and stick it in the back here, and I didn't have to strap it to me or anything like that because my leggings would hold it in place. No questions asked. The first day I hurt my back this time, I did not put the leggings on. And there was a huge difference in the way I felt on day 2 versus the 2 previous times I had done it. I don't know what I was thinking. I just was so aggravated with the situation that I wasn't using my tools. So once I started using the compression leggings, I saw some fairly quick improvement as each day went on. So compression or support, an abdominal corset, which can be picked up at Walgreens or CVS, on Amazon, any place like that, Walmart probably. And those are those back support that you wrap around your lower back to just give you that extra support. Or compression leggings. If you need to know more about that, you can talk to me. I can help you with that. We talked a little bit about movement already. Cat-cow or some lower back yoga routines are definitely helpful and recommended by a couple of different websites. So that's where that movement comes in. But they stress dynamic stretching versus static stretching. So cat-cow, if you're not familiar, I can post a short tutorial in the comments when I'm done. It has to do with breathing in and lowering your back kind of like a cow, so that your back is like this and your butt is up in the air and your chest is up in the air. You're on your hands and knees in what's known as tabletop position. You take a deep breath in, raise your head, raise your rear, and lower your belly. And then you move into, as you exhale, a cat stretch, which I've seen called the sofa bison. So if you're familiar with what I'm talking about, you would then lower your head, lower your rear, and arch your spine like this. And you keep moving with your breath so that you are in a dynamic stretch. And it is truly very helpful when you have back pain, especially lower back pain. So my lower back yoga routine included this along with some other good glute stretches that also, as I've already indicated, really, really helped me to get the back stretched out and get things moving and reduce the discomfort and the tightness. Obviously, it's important to keep moving, but without a doubt, stay away from the BLTs. And I thought this was a hilarious acronym, and I don't mean the sandwich. You stay away from the BLTs, which is bending, lifting, twisting. Now, with the lower back yoga, there is some bending involved, but there are very specific stretches that you can do that are just really good. Anything that a lot of times, in my case, what I've discovered when I threw my back out, basically how I describe it is all the muscles back here locked up on me. And I could tell this last time that it happened that they were without a doubt spasming. So, the yoga was my first go-to because I had learned the 2 previous times that the yoga was very helpful. So that is absolutely where I started first. I started with child pose stretches and glute stretches and anything that would stretch the lower back, the hip, or the glutes. And I am almost 100%. I'm still being cautious because there's still a little stiffness when I wake up in the morning. That's because the muscle's tightening up. Okay, so those are the things to do. Ice in the first 24 to 48 hours, some kind of compression, back support. Try to move as much as you can without pain. Pain and discomfort, pain and tightness, they're different things. If you're making audible noises when you're moving because it hurts that bad, then you probably should be resting. But even in the resting stage, some of these spinal websites recommend that you still make it a point to get up and move every 30 minutes to an hour. Painkillers and muscle relaxants are an option if you have them. If it's anything that's not over the counter, you should probably talk to your doctor. And I don't know about you, but if I take ibuprofen for more than 3 or 4 days, it causes stomach trouble. So what I'm learning to do if things like this happen is I actually double up on my turmeric first, and a couple of the spinal websites did recommend that. Of course, turmeric is an herbal supplement, and as we learned from my What's in a Label Wellness Wednesday, those things are not regulated by the FDA, and the label that the FDA does require is that there's not enough conclusive evidence to support. But turmeric has helped me quite a bit. I learned about it when I had costochondritis, and so I start doubling my turmeric dosage for the day during these times so that I can get off of the ibuprofen a little bit sooner. I think I took ibuprofen for 3 days, and then I was able to, on day 4, go all day without anything. Took it at bedtime, kind of just in case, and then haven't had it since. So huge difference. So painkillers and muscle relaxants are an option, but if it's something that you normally have trouble with, or if it's something that if you need something stronger than over the counter, then you probably need to see a physician. Okay, so that's what to do. How can you prevent? One important thing I forgot to talk about here is, oh, no, it's coming. Okay, so how to prevent, sorry, little bit of a squirrel. Proper form. Proper form when you are lifting. Good morning, Miss Denise. How are you today? Proper form when you are lifting is essential. I have caught myself doing way too much bending over or only bending one leg instead of squatting. Yes, turmeric for the win for sure, Denise. As opposed to squatting and keeping my back straight and my core stable. So proper form when you're lifting is really important. The fact of the matter is that this can happen anybody. If you sneeze wrong, twist wrong, the second time I did this, y'all, I was pushing garbage down in the garbage can. That's why I get so aggravated with this stuff, because I'm like, this is stupid. And I'm not doing this anymore. So how to prevent proper form, super important. Posture. This is also where I can find myself guilty. Posture is really important. We already talked about proper chair fit, that your butt should be able to go all the way back to the back of the chair if you're sitting at a desk all day with your feet on the floor. I know that I have caused myself a various lot of problems over the years perching on the edge of a seat with my legs crossed where one leg is pulling the other one down. I've caused myself knee problems, all kinds of stuff like that. So proper form in your chair, sitting up with the right lumbar support, your butt all the way to the back of the chair. And if your feet can't touch the floor, then really your feet should be elevated like in a recliner. Even in Eric's recliner, getting older is not for wimps is absolutely right, Denise. Even in Eric's recliner, it's kind of big for me. So when I would sit in his recliner on the heating pad, I would have to push my butt all the way back to the seat and then put my feet on the edge of the recliner stool. I don't know what that's called. I'm sure there's an official name for it. I would have to put my feet on the edge of it to kind of help keep myself pushed back to the back of the seat, because I knew how important it was to keep things in the right form while I was trying to heal my back. Usually I don't sit in his recliner. Usually the only time I sit in his recliner is if I need the heating pad or need to stretch something out. So proper form, proper fitting chair, super important. Posture. You may or may not have picked up in previous Wellness Wednesdays, this is a standing desk. I have been using a standing desk since 2010 because of the problems I was having with my hips and the weak glute muscles from sitting 8 to 10 hours a day, literally 8 to 10 hours a day minimum. I was really starting to feel it. So I stand at a standing desk. And here's what I've caught myself doing a lot of lately. The more time I spend at my desk, the more I'm like this, or I'm like this, or I'm like this. Guess what? Standing desk isn't doing me any good, because what I'm doing is I am compromising my posture and I am giving my muscles the opportunity to weaken, basically. I'm not using them the way they're supposed to be. I actually had a friend that I was talking about this with that recommended, I know there's a name for them. I want to say Basu ball, but I'm not sure that's correct, so don't quote me on that. But it's basically like a stability ball in a little frame. It's a very small one that you can stand on, and that may be something that I add to my routine to keep me mindful that I am not standing in ways that are going to weaken my core muscles, my back muscles, or my glute muscles. Because there's a good chance that this last round with my back had a lot to do with the way I was standing at and leaning on my desk. So if you are going to use a standing desk, try not to spend all of your time with your weight hitched on one leg, or leaning on your desk, because that can set you up for problems. So proper chair fit, posture, proper form when lifting, regular physical activity. There is no question that as our sedentary, and I know statistics says that correlation does not equal causation, but the increasing number of trouble that people are having with their backs goes very interestingly with the increasing amount of time we spend on our butts, either at our desks at work or at home in front of the TV. As our lives become more convenient, and more streamlined with internet and drive-throughs and deliveries and whatever, we spend a lot more time on our butts. And that is actually really not healthy for us. So regular physical activity, not just standing, if you're at a desk all day, it's important to set a timer to get up and walk around periodically. Get out there and do things. Gardening is fantastic. Anything that's physical. There's some people that will shoot this down because they say it's not enough, but if the only physical activity you get is going up the stairs instead of going on the elevator, then do it. Park farther away. Just like we talked about with that incidental exercise, like using the basket in the grocery store instead of the cart that you can lean on. Regular physical activity, walking, yoga, Pilates, anything like that, regular workouts, as long as you are listening to your body and you're not doing too much too fast in the beginning, regular physical activity is always going to do your muscles better, especially if you're stretching regularly. Yes, you can, a lot of people set a timer for that, Danielle, they just get up every 20 minutes, every 30 minutes and walk around. They go to the water cooler, whatever. It'll probably make you more productive when you are in your chair anyway, to be honest with you. Denise, yes, lots of stretching during gardening or yard work, but be mindful of how you're moving, because when I help Eric with yard work, I just figured out recently that the reason I always have one sore hamstring afterwards is because of what I was talking about earlier, which is the bending over to pick up sticks and not squatting. I'm bending over and I'm only bending one leg and I'm keeping this leg straight. So what happens? I end up with a really sore, tight hamstring for the next couple of days that I really struggle to get loosened up. So be mindful of how you're moving when you're doing that gardening and yard work. But yes, there's lots of great stretching there. And probably if you're doing any squatting, some great strength opportunities there as well. Core strength and strengthening muscles. Pilates is really, really good for strengthening the core. And when I say core, your core is your rib cage basically to your knees. That's all of your hip muscles, all of your back muscles, stomach, all of that. We're not just talking about the muscles that give you the six-pack abs. We're talking your whole core. And there's actually a website that cautioned against that sometimes too much core strength can be a problem. If certain core muscles are switched on all the time, that can create problems too. So what you want is balanced stuff. So yoga for flexibility. Pilates is a great combination of yoga and additional strength moves, and usually very much core based, which is the whole core. Just make sure that whatever you're doing to strengthen your muscles, you're doing it in a fairly balanced fashion. And if you're not sure what to do, if you've never really done a whole lot of exercise or working out, then you may want to talk to your doctor, make sure you're clear to do that, get their recommendations, and maybe even seek a personal trainer for some of that, because a personal trainer can guide you to make sure that you are getting those balanced strengthening moves. So that you're strengthening all the things, not just one particular set of muscles. And flexibility, super important. Again, yoga, I can't stress enough. Yoga in the past has kept me from having to go see a chiropractor because my body would just automatically adjust itself when needed when I got into certain positions. But that flexibility, those breathing exercises will keep your muscles, and there's strengthening in yoga too. I can remember the first time I ever went to yoga class, I thought, oh, this is nothing. It's just going to be a bunch of stretching. And I was sore. Excuse me. I was sore for 5 days from that very first yoga session. It was crazy. And I learned huge respect for yoga. Yoga is also where I started to learn that sometimes where it hurts is not where the problem is. So Flexibility, especially with yoga and Pilates, these are great ways to strengthen and stretch and also learn how your body talks. If you're not one that's always paid attention to those things, you can kind of learn how your body moves and how it talks. And that way you know more quickly if you have a problem. So when should you seek medical attention if you have lower back pain? If you've thrown your back out and you've got that acute pain, when should you seek medical attention? If the pain lasts for longer than 3 to 4 weeks or gets worse instead of improving. In my case, I have had steady improvement every single day. So I know I'm good. And like I said, at this point, it's still a little tight in the morning when I get up, but there's really not any more pain. And I've been walking on the treadmill for the last couple of days, and that definitely seems to help and get some blood flowing. So I'm just about ready. I even did a couple little quick jogs on the treadmill yesterday. So I don't think I'm quite there yet, but almost. So if it lasts more than 3 to 4 weeks or gets worse instead of improving as you treat it, then you need to go see a doctor. If it's following a traumatic event, if you've had a fall or an accident, and that is what's causing the acute pain, then you need to get looked at to make sure that nothing else has happened, that there's nothing else underlying that has occurred. Super important. So anything following a traumatic accident event, that, like I said, a fall, bouncing yourself off the side of a toilet, which I did a few years ago, popped out a rib, gave myself a case of costochondritis. I did go get x-rays to make sure nothing was broken. Even though we all know that I'm not one that likes to go to the doctor unless I absolutely have to. Even I know when it's time. So again, if you've had an accident, a fall, and that acute pain has set in after the fact, even if you got up and walked away from that, which is common for adrenaline to kind of kick in if you've been in an accident, you don't always feel things right away. So if the acute pain has set in as a result of that, then you definitely need to see the doctor. If you have pain, weakness, or loss of, if the pain is also associated with weakness or loss of feeling in your legs, numbness or tingling, this can sometimes be indicative of a problem with a vertebrae, as you all know, and a nerve issue. So if you have tingling or numbness that's in relationship to this acute pain, you need to go see the doctor. If you have bladder or bowel control issues that are related to this back pain, you need to go see the doctor. If you have unintended or unexplained weight loss in association with this pain, you need to go see the doctor. And if you have fever or any symptoms of illness in association with the pain, you absolutely need to go see the doctor. So there are definitely ways, and in most situations, for example, what I did, I know this is something, I go, okay, Donna, what did you do that was stupid? What do you need to do now to fix it? So I immediately start, and I will never skip the first day without compression again, ever. But I'm more interested now in focusing on how to prevent this from happening again versus dealing with it when it does. But I will deal with it immediately with compression and ice, and I know the right ways to massage and to stretch to try to start loosening it up. But again, if any of these things occur, if it's been more than 3 or 4 weeks, or it's following a traumatic event, or you have weakness or loss of feeling, numbness, tingling, anything like that, bladder or bowel control issues, unintended or unexplained weight loss, or fever or symptoms that are associated with the acute onset of pain, you make sure you get to the doctor or the emergency room. So hopefully some of these things will help you. I have some links I'm happy to send. Send me a message, drop a comment for some of the stuff that I looked at. And again, different schools of thought. You may know your body, and you may know your body does better with rest. I know my body. I know my body does better with movement, and that I have suffered much less. The 3 times that I've done this now, I have healed faster and suffered less when I have kept myself moving to some extent. So that's totally up to you. But remember the ice, the compression, giving your muscles the support they need, movement, and avoiding the high impact stuff. And of course, check with your doctor if you need any kind of painkillers that are more than over the counter or more than 3 or 4 days. Okay, I hope you found this helpful. Let me know if you need help with anything. Send me a message if you would like any of the links. Good morning, Hilda. I'm just finishing up, but I hope you'll find the time to go back to the beginning and watch from the beginning. And remember, guys, the best way to prevent is to get your body moving and do the things, regular physical activity, and strengthen those muscles so that you don't maybe have to deal. I won't say you'll never have to deal with this problem, but you won't have to deal with it as much. And maybe you'll recover a little faster. I'm sure that the reason I'm able to recover so quickly is because of how active I am and how much I do with yoga and things like that anyway. So I hope it was helpful. All right. This was a long one today. I will see you all next Wednesday. I hope you have a fabulous day. If you found this helpful, please share and let me know if there's anything you would like me to look into to cover for a future Wellness Wednesday. Bye. Have a great day.